Welcome, brothers and sisters in Adam. I am Rad King, and this is my sermon dedicated solely to the lore and interesting tidbits related to the many Enclave power armor suits throughout the series. One of, if not the most technologically advanced faction in the Wasteland, they created some truly effective and great looking power armor, and these suits span almost every game. Some of these suits are iterative, building and improving on older versions. So, in that spirit, I will start chronologically at the earliest Enclave suits and move forward through time to see how they changed. There is also no shortage of controversy relating to the newer games, so crank up the rads and relax a tad while I unfold the entire story of Enclave power armor. Remember to stick around at the end of my video for the comment highlights. Let's begin. This story starts with the rather infamous suit of X-01 power armor. X-01 was commissioned by the Joint Chiefs of Staff before the Great War. When exactly this was is unclear. However, it was early enough that a number of units were constructed. The confirmed areas with units of X-01 are the Commonwealth and possibly Appalachia, although there's also a very good chance that there are more units elsewhere. Schematics of the armor were sent to the White Springs Bunker in Appalachia, which was an Enclave retreat and base of operations after the Great War, along with the Control Station Enclave on the oil rig off the coast of California. This experimental design was not in production before the Great War, and it is unknown if it was ever slated for full production, but it would serve as the basis for future Enclave research. A White Spring terminal entry mentions the armor was technically operational, but not ready for prime time yet. Even so, in Fallout 4 where we first see the X-01 power armor, it seems to outperform all contemporary pre-war models, including the T-45, T-60, and even the T-51. This is particularly impressive, since the T-51 was widely considered the most advanced power armor model of the pre-war. That seems to show the potential of X-01, and probably the reason the Enclave chose it as a springboard for their own power armor designs. Before the Great War, the US military had a special project in cooperation with Nuka-Cola of all companies, primarily due to their excellent chemists, which was known as Project Cobalt. Although there were several aims of Project Cobalt, one of them included the research of strontium-90, which was used to coat a suit of X-01 power armor, vastly increasing its protective capabilities. This would not be used on any other version of power armor, making this so-called quantum X-01 likely the only one of its kind. The post-war was a really transformative time for, well, just about everyone, but that holds also for the X-01 armor. In Fallout 76, the X-01 can only be crafted in-game, and no suits can be found within the area of Appalachia. The player can do this after obtaining the schematics at the White Springs Bunker, and the notable absence of this power armor in the overworld may indicate that the Enclave in Appalachia never actually constructed any suits themselves. Regardless, the armor became the basis for Enclave research, where they expanded on the already very capable platform. According to the Fallout Bible, which may or may not be canon, the Enclave began working on their advanced power armor project in 2198, which is 121 years after the Great War. That is a really long time to wait to pick up where the X-01 project left off. But in their defense, maybe they didn't have a direct need for a new power armor, because I'm sure they were kind of busy with a thing or two since there was that tiny little nuclear war and all. This effort to begin the advanced power armor project in 2198 received renewed concentration in 2215, where a presidential mandate expressly ordered Enclave personnel and resources to be dedicated to the new power armor, which eventually came to a head in 2220, when the so-called advanced power armor was finally brought into service. Sometime in the century and a half that it took the Enclave to create an advanced version of the X-01 power armor, the Institute, all the way over in Boston, created a unique coating that can only be applied to suits of X-01. This is referred to in-game as the Institute paint, and cannot be applied to any other kind of suit, which may indicate that the X-01 has advanced materials that the other models don't. This would also indicate that the Institute may have had a model of X-01, or at least parts of one, so that they can make this specialized coating. That is a somewhat surprising aspect of the Institute, given that they don't really seem to care about power armor, or really making good weapons, since the Institute laser rifle is comically inept. We don't know anything more about X-01, other than that there was research done that eventually led to the advanced power armor in the Enclave and the specialized coating from the Institute. Unless someone somewhere else in the United States had the ability and desire to create new units of X-01, we can just assume that the X-01 remained a pre-war oddity. In Fallout 4, there are only a few areas where X-01 can be found regardless of player level, which will usually spawn at level 28. An X-01 helmet can always be found on the Prydwen in Proctor Teagan's shop, although it has to be stolen as it's never for sale. If Paladin Dance's life is spared in the Blind Betrayal quest, he will leave his trusty T60 power armor behind and instead pull out a suit of X-01, although it is unknown where exactly he got it, because that is not exactly Brotherhood standard issue. Maybe he pulled it out of his butt. I mean, have you talked to the guy? It definitely seems like he has something permanently crammed up there. The last static suit of X-01 that can be found is in Nuka World, and that is the Special Quantum X-01 with the Strontium-90 coating, which has been locked away in a glass display case for centuries. This unit was used as some sort of advertising or promotion for Nuka-Cola, which sounds on brand for pre-war companies in Fallout, being in complete cahoots with the military-industrial complex. The X-01 armor in Fallout 4 is the most capable of all models, so let's understand how powerful this armor was by comparing it to other models of power armor in the two games that it can be used in, namely Fallout 4 and 76. In Fallout 4, it is the most capable of all models found in the game, with a Mark 6 version beating out everything else in terms of physical and energy resistance and total HP. The only thing it does not do better than the second best suit in Fallout 4, which is the T60, is radiation resistance, which is exactly the same as the T60. So it is interesting that this armor was considered not ready for prime time, yet all existing specimens that can be found and used in Fallout 4 are just as reliable as any other suit of armor and is superior in every way to all other pre-war versions. It has all the upgrades that can be found on other models of power armor, and even a couple unique ones which include a thermal coating modification and X-01 EMP shielding. The thermal coating has the same effect as the winterized mod, just without the color change, and the shielding mod has the same effect as the prism shielding, but is a bit cheaper to craft. These differences are likely the result of different materials and technologies between the different models of power armor. Fallout 76 was quite different from Fallout 4 in terms of ranking the power armor models against each other. This new balance makes the X-01 not as obviously superior as Fallout 4. Whereas in Fallout 4 it was the top dog of all the models, the X-01 has about the same physical damage resistance as the T60 while having better energy and radiation resistance. The T51 on the other hand is much more comparable now. The T51 has a substantial increase in physical damage when compared to the X-01. It has the same energy resistance, but a good deal less radiation resistance. It doesn't stop there though, because the X-01 loses out in every way to the newer T65 armor and the Ultrasight power armor, which has higher physical damage resistance, but again is beaten out by the X-01 on radiation and energy resistance. I appreciate this more nuanced approach to the models of power armor in 76, and it shows that in some ways, Bethesda was listening to fans from Fallout 4, and that is important because of the controversy that was started by X-01. Perhaps the difference in capability between the Fallout 76 X-01 and Fallout 4 X-01 is that the only suits that can be used by the player in Appalachia have to be crafted. And perhaps some of the high-tech production techniques used during the pre-war that created the suits found in Fallout 4 just made higher quality X-01. That is just some conjecture on my part and has no basis in any of the games. But it would explain the discrepancy between the X-01 in Fallout 4 and what can be found in Fallout 76. In Fallout 76, this armor has an incredible amount of paints and visual customization, which should come as no surprise since that is one of the strong points of Fallout 76. I mean, just look at these. The Blackbird paint is definitely one of my favorites, and I love the nod to the SR-71. But look at this Inferno paint. Or this Nuka Shine paint. There are actually some pretty cool designs in here. Looking at the design of the power armor, the relationship with the advanced power armor in earlier Fallouts is immediately apparent, but there are significant differences. The suit is bigger overall, but that can be said for all suits in Fallout 4 and 76, regardless of model. The eye covers are smaller in relation to the whole helmet, and they also double as lamps for illuminating in the dark. The helmet shape has been changed to not angle to a point near the chin as much, and there are 2 visible external filters for breathing. There's also been the addition of this component, which it looks removable and similar to a screw-in type filter, almost like an oil filter from a car, but I don't know how many filters this thing could possibly have. The X01 is my favorite design of any power armor to date, and the asymmetry in the helmet makes it appear more alien and menacing in appearance. I just really like all the aspects of this armor. I think they work together really well, and that includes the increased bulk and size, which came as a result of how the player interacts with the power armor in Fallout 4 and 76. So, I would be remiss to not address the X01 controversy that came up after the Nuka World DLC. As most of you are aware, up until Fallout 4, T-51B was regarded as the best pre-war power armor, only being beaten out by post-war Enclave suits. That was reinforced by a Fallout 4 loading screen that specifically mentioned the T-51 being the pinnacle of pre-war power armor before the war, only to have Nuka World give us the quantum armor that was created in Project Cobalt before the war, and having it locked away all these years until the player character finds it. X01 is obviously superior based on the in-game stats, and its heavy resemblance to Enclave power armor caused many to be upset at the apparent retcon, because now we have a pre-war power armor that is more powerful than T-51. And I think a lot of this outrage was justified, since it didn't even seem like the developers could be consistent within their own game, given the information we get from the loading screen. Then came the arguments about whether X01 could possibly be post-war, and the fans brought up another good point. The Enclave designed their advanced power armor seen in Fallout 2, but the presence of X01 would seem to imply the Enclave just inherited their armor from the pre-war and branded it as their own. It really was a veritable rat's nest of retcons and lore, but Fallout 76 righted the ship a bit, so to speak. Terminal entries in the White Springs bunker specifically mentions sending schematics of X01 to Enclave bases and refers to the suit as being experimental. Secondly, X01 is balanced better against its pre-war contemporaries in Fallout 76, with the T-51 being a better overall suit, and the T-60 quite comparable. There are many who are still not satisfied with this solution, and I kind of understand that. But it does seem to smooth over a few of the issues that was raised from Fallout 4. The next step in the evolution of Enclave power armor is, as we mentioned before, the Advanced Power Armor Mark I. Its development began in 2198, with the X01 being the basis for research and development. By 2220, the armor was developed and began to be used by the Enclave, who seem to have been using T-51B power armor in the meantime, since several T-51 suits can be found at Control Station Enclave, aka the oil rig. The armor was made with lightweight metal alloys that had reinforced ceramic castings at critical points to increase ruggedness. The motion assist servos are high quality thanks to Enclave tech, which clever Enclave grunts could use to take naps. Locking the servos in place while standing would allow the user to fall asleep standing up, with the appearance of being on vigilant guard duty. Man, no wonder Arch Dornan is so ornery about sleeping Enclave soldiers. Other confirmed advanced systems include air conditioning, which, yeah, a suit with a mini nuclear reactor standing outside under the sun in the southwestern United States would definitely need some temperature control, but also included a radio and a urine recycling system. This is made known in pretty funny dialogue between the Chosen One and one of the Right children, who ask, in typical child fashion, how the Chosen One is supposed to pee while in the armor. The Chosen One replies with, "Actually, I just urinate in the armor, and it recycles everything." Isn't that interesting? Do you know what recycling means, little one? This actually seems to be a fairly common feature, since the T-51 is also stated in-game to have waste recycling. Although, Survival mode in Fallout 4 does not take this into account since the wearer can get thirsty while wearing power armor. Man, that game is just literally unplayable. Advanced Power Armor Mark 1 is superior to the T51 armor in Fallout 2, as well as the hardened variant of T51B. In no category does the hardened power armor beat the advanced armor, but it does have the same damage resistance and damage threshold for laser, fire, and explosive damage, but getting beat out in normal, plasma, and electrical damage types. It does all this while also being lighter than T51, showing how superior it really is. The overall design did not vary a whole lot from X01, although, like all power armors in Fallout 2, the lower portion of the suit appears to be less heavily armored, especially when compared to the original X01 design. There's just like so much space down there. Like, look how wide their stance is. The 3D Fallout power armors are basically rubbing their thighs together with every step. The helmet changed the most, with highly visible reflective yellow eye lenses, a more angular, almost mantis or insect-like shape, and two bottom protrusions that I don't really know the function of. Perhaps they are one-way outlets for exhaust air. Lastly, I just noticed this, but there appear to be two panels that can be removed on either side of the helmet that can have hooks or loops attached for what I am guessing are entirely illegitimate reasons, but I can't think of any. Fallout 2 has a love for unnecessary facial hardware. Just look at some of those super mutants. I like this design quite a bit, although I do prefer the helmet and general size and bulk of the X01, which is why it edges out the advanced power armor in my book. It is also interesting that the Fallout 2 developers purposefully made the Enclave insect-like in many regards, which is most obvious with the advanced power armor helmet, as well as the dragonfly-like vertebrates. I really do wonder why they decided on this design inspiration for the Enclave. Although it took the Enclave 120 years to finally make their own suit of power armor, it didn't take them very long to make the Advanced Power Armor Mark II. Visually identical to the previous version, it boasts enhanced defense and durability, owing to more advanced materials. The development history behind this version of power armor is unknown, and the main upgrade appears to be ceramic plating that covers the entirety of the suit, as opposed to a mix of metal and ceramic in the Mark I. It is a worthwhile upgrade over the Mark I version, since it has higher damage resistance or damage threshold for normal, plasma, explosive, and electrical, with only laser and EMP staying the same. There really isn't much else in regards to the Advanced Power Armor Mark II. At least, that's how it was until Fallout 3 rolled around the corner in 2008. Enclave Power Armor Mark II is, by definition, found in Fallout 3, and is in fact the basic Enclave power armor. You would be totally forgiven for not realizing that, however, since it bears absolutely zero resemblance to the Mark II power armor in Fallout 2. In-game, it is also called simply Enclave Power Armor, or the Brotherhood of Steel nickname of Black Devil Armor. Since that name is pretty metal, I'm going to refer to the armor by that name in order to not confuse this model with the Mark II model from Fallout 2. There is next to zero lore about this version of power armor, its development, or why it shares the same name as the Fallout 2 armor. We are left to try and make sense of this issue with in-universe justification that honestly makes the whole X01 issue seem quite tame in comparison. I'll go over the speculation a little later because that will make up the bulk of this section on the Black Devil armor. Looking at how the armor stacks up against the other Fallout 3 armors, it is not as capable as the base level T51B. It has substantially less damage resistance and HP for both the suit and the helmet, while also protecting less from radiation. The only advantage it has is an increase of strength by 1, but using this armor also lowers agility by 1 and charisma by 1. Really, this is just a modest step up from the T45, which is the most basic armor in the game. So what's going on here? Unfortunately, we only have fan speculation as Bethesda has never justified how this armor is named and portrayed in game, like they did with the X01 in Fallout 4. Before talking about that, however, I wanted to take a look at the armor itself. There is essentially no part of this design that is carried over from the Power Armor Mark I or II, except possibly the reflective yellow lenses over the eyes. It has dropped the large cowl or hump and reincorporates pauldrons like the other armor designs, although they are much smaller than designs like the T-51. Inside the suit, near the shoulders, are some turbine-looking contraptions, which could be doing really any number of things. Leave a comment if you have an idea of what the purpose of these could be. The plating on the torso resembles natural musculature, and the helmet design itself has a few similarities to the Midwest Brotherhood of Steel power armor in Fallout Tactics. The Midwestern armor looks more aggressive, but the golden reflective eye lenses and prominent protrusions on either side of the head really stand out. No other suit of power armor has the prominent horns, which could mean that the Midwestern power armor served as somewhat of a design inspiration. There is a lot of concept art for the Black Devil power armor, and it seems one of the constants among each of these options is the presence of horns, which is likely an attempt to subconsciously make players regard the Enclave as evil or menacing upon encountering them. Nothing says I'm a bad guy like two little horns now, does it? The last random, but nonetheless interesting tidbit is that the pauldrons on the armor are not actually attached to the suit itself. They just kind of float in place. Now that is some advanced technology. Good going, Enclave. Fallout 76 has a skin of the Black Devil armor, but it is just termed the Enclave power armor in name. The skin can be bought in the Atomic store, but has a lot of differences from the Fallout 3 power armor, like incorporating an X-01-like cowl, modified pauldrons, more streamlined features on the helmet, and a large addition to the back of the power armor, with some nice glowy bits in there. The eyes will even glow, projecting light for the user just like the X-01. I actually like this design more than the Fallout 3 armor. The streamlined design just works better for me. As far as lore implications go, since there's no other information about this armor in the base game, I believe this is just a fun inclusion for fans. So here's where I want to discuss some of the in-game justifications for this whole Advanced Power Armor Mark II mess. The easiest issue to explain away is the inferiority of Black Devil armor to T-51, since previous Advanced Power Armor models the Enclave developed were very obviously superior. This would be a step backward in capability, and why go through the trouble of redesigning entire suits if the end result is just an inferior product? Well, one compelling argument I have seen is that the suits were a redesign out of necessity. See, the Enclave in Fallout 3 are the remnants of the Enclave forces that fled the destruction of Control Station Enclave and moved their forces across the United States all the way to Raven Rock, where President Eden had been waiting for centuries. This cross-country trek would no doubt be difficult, especially since the Enclave were moving out of desperation, as they just had their base and likely many of their resources blown up by some random tribal guy. So it may make sense then that they redesigned their power armor to be easier to make, easier to repair, and require lower technological know-how and capabilities to produce. This would likely end with an inferior product. But if your main concern is having a usable, fixable, and reproducible power armor while engaged in a long-distance exodus, then honestly, this is a pretty decent explanation. While we are on the topic of decent explanations, let's talk about the absolutely crappy explanation for the name issue between the Fallout 2 Advanced Power Armor Mark II and the Fallout 3 Advanced Power Armor Mark II, aka Black Devil armor. Man, that's so confusing. The best explanation I have seen is that the Mark II in Fallout 2 is actually the Black Devil power armor, and that if Bethesda waves their magic retcon wand, we can all just pretend that the visual portrayal of Mark II in Fallout 2 is wrong, and we should instead imagine the Enclave wearing Black Devil armor. I hate that for many reasons, and really I think the only way to smooth this over a little bit would be to clarify a few things. Say something like, the West Coast Enclave, on their way to the East Coast, met up and regrouped with Enclave forces stationed in different bases as they passed through on their way to the Capital Wasteland. One of these groups had their own power armor program, which resulted in a suit that is essentially the Black Devil power armor. This power armor was then adopted by the now orphaned Western Enclave. Maybe they modified it further to be easier and cheaper to produce, so that the Enclave could continue their journey, which would technically make this a new version, or Mark II, of this independently created advanced power armor. I admit that this is a stretch, but Bethesda put themselves in this weird position by stating multiple times in Fallout 3 that their armor is Advanced Power Armor Mark II, rather than doing the minimum effort and just calling it Advanced Power Armor Mark III. Alright, the rant's over. The Fallout 3 Tesla armor is a variant of the Black Devil armor. It shares the same look, with the notable inclusion of large coils or vacuum tube-like devices that are attached to various portions of the armor, most notably on the pauldrons. There is extra wiring across the torso, gauntlet, and legs, where you can find, yet again, more coils. On the back are two large glowing cylinders, and they are so large in fact, that it even clips into the helmet. Can you imagine having to wear this armor and barely being able to move your head up or side to side? The function of these cylinders is not entirely clear. They could be part of the suit's built-in generator to help meet the increased power demands of the suit. They could also be some sort of step-up transformer to increase the voltage needed by the extra tech, although I do think this is less likely. The most likely in my mind that they are some sort of field generating tech, since we can see a yellowish electrical field pulse across the surface of the armor. Tesla armor is superior to basic Black Devil armor with a slightly higher damage resistance, HP, and an increased radiation resistance, and plus 10 to the energy weapon's skill, but still lagging behind the T-51B power armor in every stat. Fallout 3 does not have damage types, otherwise it would make sense that the armor would be more effective maybe at defending against energy weapons, similar to the Tesla armor in the first Fallouts. Rather than specifically defending against energy weapons, instead it enhances energy weapons, which when you think about it, is quite curious. Maybe this pulsing field doesn't protect as much as it boosts the energy capacity of energy weapons, making the lasers or plasma bolts that much more energetic and damaging. The last difference between the Tesla model and the basic model, other than random little bits and wires, is that it just looks old and worn. Like seriously, look at the surface of this armor, with that weird texture and yellow color. One might chalk this up to some kind of corrosive buildup, similar to how the terminals on a battery can get that blue or green corrosion buildup. But I think this hints towards the Tesla armor actually just being older. Protector Kazdan of the Brotherhood Outcasts will pay the player to bring him different technology like power armor, energy weapons, and sensor modules, and upon trading him a suit of Tesla power armor, he will remark that he has not seen a suit of armor like this for a long time before accepting it. This would indicate the armor has been in use for some time, as even Brotherhood members are aware of it. The implications of this are interesting, given what we discussed about the background of the Black Devil armor. If all these suits really are this old, why don't they have newer ones? Why are they keeping these old units still in service? Perhaps like we discussed before, the resource crunch on the Enclave has meant that they try and get as much use out of old tech as possible. But if that were the case, where are the surviving Power Armor Mark I suits? Those ones were handily superior to the T-51, whereas neither the Black Devil nor the Tesla armor is superior to T-51. This sort of thing is giving me a headache the more I think about it. There is a cut version of this armor, referred to in game files as Robo-Thor, which is a funny name, and might have to do with the fact that the armor has pulsing electricity across its surface. Visually identical to the in-game Tesla armor, it has slightly lower damage resistance than the vanilla version, but a lot more HP, beating out even the T-51 by over 1,000. Finally, some Enclave tech that can beat pre-war power armor in Fallout 3. Or I guess it would have been had this version not been cut. Unfortunately, it is only available via console commands, but it gives some insight as to how the developers were balancing the armor before settling on the current in-game version. My personal opinion on the design is overall positive. I like the arcs of energy, the glowing plasma bulbs, and even the overall dirtier look. The helmet does look out of place, however, since it does not have the same patina as the rest of the armor, so it looks a bit odd. The Black Devil power armor look is, overall, my least favorite of all power armors. The Tesla armor is less common, as it only spawns in the late game, and if broken steel is installed, the newer Hellfire armor will spawn a lot more than the Tesla armor. Speaking of the Hellfire armor, Let's take a look at that now. Although it first appeared in the Fallout 3 expansion Broken Steel, it actually got the lore relating to its origin from Fallout 76. Fallout 3 had no lore or explanation for its appearance or its background. A terminal entry in Vault 51, which was run by the Zax 1.3 supercomputer, shows that Zax tried repeatedly to request the delivery of a suit of prototype Hellfire power armor in the year 2080. So that was only 3 years after the Great War. The first attempt was denied due to a lack of security clearance, but Zax was a clever one. Looking in his databanks, he found the head of Future Tech, the division of Vault Tech, which was a super secretive division heading up the most advanced technology Vault Tech could muster. Zax analyzed the director's writing style, this director being one Stanislaus Brown, and was able to copy the style with a 99.6% accuracy, after which it resent a request impersonating the director. This new message reamed the team who processes requests, and the ploy worked, and Zax was provided with a suit of prototype Hellfire armor. Who was this team that fulfilled the request, I hear you asking? Why, it was the Enclave, of course. Which of the Enclave groups isn't expressly stated, although the most probable group would be the Appalachian Enclave, since they are the closest to Vault 51, and they were known to be active right after the Great War in 2077. If this assumption is correct, then the Appalachian Enclave were developing their Hellfire armor independently from any other group, with a working prototype being available as early as 3 years after the Great War. The suit would stay in its prototype stage for many years, as the Appalachian Enclave directed efforts instead to trying to launch Appalachia's nuclear ordnance at China, because 1 Great War isn't enough, and 2 is too low. The Appalachian Enclave would go on to seal their fate when their efforts to launch the nuclear payloads in Appalachia led to the Scorched Plague and Scorched Beasts that would wipe out all the humans. What happened with the Hellfire prototypes or the plans after the destruction of the Appalachian Enclave is unknown. But the next time we see Enclave efforts to create and use Hellfire power armor is in the Capital Wasteland in Fallout 3. Around 2277, which is when the events of Fallout 3 take place, the Enclave are able to begin producing the armor at their Adams Air Force Base outpost, after the Enclave leadership specifically chose to direct research efforts from other projects to the Hellfire project. This is referenced by a recording that Eddie from Fallout New Vegas took and preserved, wherein the lead researcher for the Duraframe iBot project, of which Eddie was a part of, was told to stop iBot research and development, and instead focus on the Hellfire armor, making Eddie the last of his kind. In the normal sequence of events in Fallout 3, Hellfire armor is not seen until after the events of Project Purity, where the Raven Rock facility is destroyed and the Enclave are once again forced on the run, because if the Enclave's good at anything, it's looking cool and always losing. After regrouping units at the Adams Air Force Base, they begin to produce Hellfire armor, once their research and development is completely focused on it. This is likely due to the inferiority of the Black Devil and Tesla models against plain Jane T-51, and the Enclave may have decided a more powerful power armor variant would help them in their fight against the Brotherhood. The production model of Hellfire that we see in Fallout 3 has the same HP and damage resistance as T-51, plus 1 strength and plus 30 to fire resistance, while having less radiation resistance than T-51. That makes it on par with the T-51, and makes the choice between the two armors really come down to the special and stat boosts that both offer. This would seem to reinforce the idea that production was chosen specifically to match the T-51's capabilities in their ongoing conflict with the Brotherhood of Steel. Unfortunately, we cannot see how the Hellfire prototype stacks up against the rest of the power armor variants in Fallout 76, as the only in-game version is unobtainable since it is worn by the Scorched Overseer protecting Zax 1.3 in Vault 51. You can't loot the armor off his body, and the only other way to see this armor in-game is to get the paint job that can be applied to any suit of armor that changes it to look just like Hellfire armor. For shame, Bethesda. For shame. Give me a dedicated in-game Hellfire armor. Other than the high stats, the real standout part of this armor is its fire resistance. This is particularly relevant because of the name of this variant, but Hellfire troopers are commonly found in Fallout 3 to be wielding heavy incinerators. I find it peculiar that in the effort to get a suit to go toe-to-toe with the T-51, an emphasis was put on fire resistance. Sure, you see some Brotherhood troopers with flamers, but the majority of the Brotherhood of Steel uses laser weaponry. So wouldn't it make more sense to build a power armor with greater energy weapon resistance? A valid counterargument would be that the Enclave in Fallout 3 didn't really have much choice in the design, since they may have just had the plans and schematics of the prototype, and it was the prototype and the original engineers that took a keen interest in making the armor more fire resistant. The Hellfire armor in Fallout 3 then would just be a natural consequence of pressing this armor into production, and the suit's inherent fire resistance was not a specific choice made by the Enclave in Fallout 3. That brings up a question that is not that important, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because that's what I do. How did the Enclave in the Capital Wasteland get the plans to build the armor? Either the plans were sent to Raven Rock, or the Adams Air Force Base, and the East Coast Enclave obtained them upon arriving in the Capital Wasteland. Alternatively, the Enclave could have passed through Appalachia on their way to the Capital Wasteland, and recovered the plans as they moved through the area and accessed old Appalachian Enclave data. Looking at the suit, it carries subtle cues from the Black Devil armor, which is kind of interesting. Namely the eyes and small horns on either side of the head. Otherwise, it doesn't have much more carryover and is rather original in the design. I like that the black hoses that may be rubber or some sort of synthetic material on the Tesla and Black Devil suits have been dropped for what appears to be metal tubing that stays close to the armor. This may be part of the fireproofing measures that were undertaken for this suit. This isn't stated in-game by any source and is not backed up by lore, but I think it would be cool if the Hellfire armor was being developed by pre-war Enclave engineers specifically to fight and survive in a nuked environment. Like they were planning on having to deal with tactical nuclear weapons being used in their war against the Chinese, and this armor was designed to specifically withstand the heat of the blast and subsequent fires. A man can dream. Fallout New Vegas has the last Enclave armor that we will discuss in this video, and it is referred to in-game as the Remnant Power Armor. This armor is not easy to come by, and should the player character get the chance to equip it, it is later in the game. This is because, as you can tell from the appearance, it is old Enclave armor, either Mark 1 or Mark 2 advanced power armor that the Enclave used in Fallout 2, and that is seen prominently on the game cover. At this point, on the west coast, the Enclave have long since been defeated, and those that did not trek east tried to blend in as best they could and leave their past behind them. Several characters in Fallout New Vegas successfully hid their past with the Enclave and stashed away any evidence of their time as Enclave members. This included their power armor, that over time has weathered a bit and gotten a little bit of dust, but is still functional. Again, we don't know precisely if this is Mark 1 or Mark 2, although if you read the wiki, it does its best to call all Enclave power armor in Fallout 2 Mark 1, so that the Mark 2 designation for the Black Devil armor in Fallout 3 can make sense. I definitely don't agree with that, and I think it's high time for Bethesda to clear the air in regards to this mess, because I feel like I'm just being gaslit by the freaking Fallout wiki. When looking at how it stacks against the other power armors in the game, namely the T-45 and T-51, the Remnant power armor comes out with some big advantages, as well as drawbacks. With the highest damage threshold of all power armors, it offers superior protection, which makes sense given how the advanced power armor Mark 1 and 2 were obviously superior to T-51 in Fallout 2. Where you have to be careful, however, is when being attacked by really high damage enemies, as the HP of the armor is significantly lower than the T-51 or even the T-45. This is a very interesting trade-off and makes the player actually think through what is best for them and their build, rather than seeing the armor as just a straight-up upgrade and shelving all other suits of power armor permanently. This could also make a little bit of sense given the deteriorated condition of the power armor, and perhaps this condition just makes it break more easily when suffering heavy damage. Or maybe it's a hint to Enclave research doctrine, where they were more concerned about really strong defense at the expense of durability. Since the armor is not specific to any functioning faction within Fallout New Vegas, Wearing it will not cause any other faction to become immediately hostile, unlike other faction-specific clothing and armor. It is rather interesting to note, however, that the end slides speak of a scenario where Arcade Ganon, who is a remnant and in possession of his father's power armor, has his past connections revealed due to someone finding the armor, and he is subsequently jailed by the NCR. The player character is totally cool to run around Camp McCarran with that same exact piece of armor though. Those are double standards, and I will not stand their disrespect for Arcade Ganon. Speaking of the Ganon family power armor, it is the only unique variant of the Remnant armor, as it is essentially the Tesla version of the Remnant power armor. In fact, there was originally meant to be a Tesla version of the Remnant power armor, but that armor was repurposed to just be the Ganon family suit. With large prominent vacuum tube looking protrusions, smaller blue lights, and circular components with, you guessed it, even more lights, let's just say you aren't going to be very sneaky in this bad boy. Similar to Tesla armor from Fallout 3, there is an electrical pulse over the surface of the armor, and it has similar effects to the Fallout 3 Tesla power armor with a +10 to energy skills. It has the highest damage threshold of any armor, but suffers from the same drawback as the normal Remnant armor, having really low HP. This also seems to show that incorporating Tesla technology into power armor is an older practice, since some examples of Mark I or Mark II advanced power armor have obviously been outfitted with it. My opinion on this armor is overall very positive. I like how faithful it is to the advanced power armor in Fallout 2. I also like that they made it look old and weathered, which really drives home the fact that the Enclave are a thing of the past in that part of the world. I do prefer the larger, bulkier armors in later games, and like I said before, I like the X01 helmet design a little bit more, but I'm not throwing any shade at all to the Remnant armor. In fact, I love the fan-like device on the back. I may have been lightly hypnotized a few times running across the Mojave in third person. I also love the dynamic between damage threshold and HP because it makes the power armor system more interesting, rather than just, hey, this is a new power armor. It's way better than my current power armor in every single way, so I should immediately just trash it. Fallout 76 has another skin that is visually very similar to the armor that is worn by Frank Horrigan in Fallout 2. The armor is called Equalizer Power Armor, removing any reference to Horrigan, but the visual similarities are there. Again, since it is a skin, it does not have any inherent stats or abilities, and since the players in Fallout 76 generally are not giant mutant psychopaths, the armor is the same size as conventional power armor, rather than the jumbo size that Horrigan wears. Once again, we are going to dive into controversy and cover an item from the Creation Club and this little gem that is known as the X02 armor. This was added before Fallout 76 smoothed out the rough edges of X01, and the X02 did nothing to help the situation. The quest that is tied to this armor mentions that it is a more advanced version of X01. Shocker, I know. It is not clear when it was developed, but it was apparently used by Enclave forces in Fallout 3 by an elite group known as the Devil's Hand. This armor was apparently still in the prototype phase, but is more powerful than X01 in-game and accepts all modifications. The resemblance to the Black Devil armor is very obvious, as it is a very faithful recreation just in Fallout 4 bulky proportions. Since this is from the Creation Club, I'm not going to spend any time trying to square away the information given from the quest. I've honestly just about had it with the Black Devil armor. And that, brothers and sisters, covers all the Enclave power armor throughout the entire series. What are your thoughts on the retcons and current lore conflicts? How would you reconcile the current issues with Enclave power armor lore? What is your favorite Enclave power armor in any of the games? I really want to hear your thoughts, and if I like what you say a lot, it will be featured in the comment highlight of my next long form video. Speaking of which, let's get to the comment highlight from my video on FEV, as well as my new sleep aid playlist and the video about monetary inflation in Fallout. Not the other kind of Fallout inflation, you freaking sickos. I want to personally thank the Mad Doctor and Bingus Bongus for helping me get Fallout 76 footage. You guys are awesome to donate some of your time like that. I also want to thank my very first patrons. I am extremely grateful for your support. Looking through the comments, I want to say a few things about my sleep videos. I know they are shorter than what is needed to actually fall asleep to, but this endeavor is a constant effort over several weeks to build up a playlist. These small videos won't, or at least shouldn't, unless YouTube's lying to me, have any video ads so that the playlist won't be broken up by any intrusive ads. My intro is also modified to be calmer and not really noticeable. I plan on trying to make this a weekly upload, and will do so until the list reaches between 2 to 2.5 hours, which I think should be enough material. Also, sorry to those of you that wanted me to do voice acting rather than just speaking like in all my videos. I am a terrible voice actor, and it would not be relaxing at all as you lie in your bed dying of cringe. I am happy to see how many people were interested in the monetary inflation within the Fallout universe, and I want to address a couple points I saw in the comments. The first is that there are so many factors that could influence the numbers that it would have taken hours to go over everything and try to consider all possibilities. They really are endless. Maybe there was super low inflation year over year, and then it ramped up near the Great War to much higher levels, but the average year over year calculation wouldn't tell us that. Maybe the oil shortages caused plastic to be expensive, so anything that uses plastic is more expensive just because of that. Maybe a portal to another dimension opened up and King Midas jumped out and turned things into gold, so the price of gold tanked. Really, it was a broad attempt to see if we can make any sense of the hard numbers that are included in game, and was more a fun exercise than anything, so let's not get too worked up about it. Also, don't Google image search Fallout inflation, or do if that's your thing, I guess. On the FEV video, which was my last long form video, a few of you mentioned that you are tired of seeing super mutants everywhere you go in every game, since it seems like every area in the United States has a new source of the muties. I am inclined to agree with this sentiment. I do not think that every game needs to have a bunch of super mutants. I really like how Fallout New Vegas treated super mutants, where many that can be encountered in game are not openly hostile, and they aren't used as cannon fodder to pad the difficulty of certain areas. I would like more nuance, or even an area that doesn't have any super mutants, with maybe one that you can find as an Easter egg, who is friendly and just traveling through the area. Nathaniel Perry asks an interesting question, where he was wondering if the quad helix structure that according to Fallout is impervious to radiation is Adam's blessing. For those unfamiliar with Adam's blessing, this is the ability of some children of Adam to be impervious to the damaging effects of radiation. So is this blessing a mutation that causes them to have quad helix DNA? That's a really good question, and is certainly possible, and I honestly wouldn't fault anyone for having that as their headcanon. A few of you asked whether it is possible that FEV was spread through water rather than air, since Zax expressly states that it is not air transmissible. It is definitely possible that FEV contaminated water sources through leakage or some other mechanism. However, I still think that would make the virus fairly localized, since person-to-person transmission is not recorded, and the drainage basins would only carry contaminated water downstream, leaving upstream areas unaffected. Here are drainage basins for Southern California. Barrels or bits of FEV would have had to be ejected over hundreds of miles to infect the water source of everyone within the area contained in the Fallout 2 map. So I find it unlikely that water-based transmission would account for low-level infection across the region. Project Purity does show us, however, that water and FEV do mix and can have grave consequences. Zygarde left a comment comparing the testing that was done on pre-war populations like the Tuskegee syphilis experiments of the real world. I definitely think that the developers had these historical events in mind when creating these locations and writing the lore. Warrior of Virtue mentioned Erickson, the friendly super mutant from Far Harbor, and how he is an example of a mutant that started dumb and became more intelligent or aware with time. He isn't sure what did it, and says it could either be the fog or the vim that he drank while at the factory that caused him to start thinking and questioning things. I think this is an interesting possibility that a future video talking specifically about super mutants would certainly cover. Ben Turner left a comment correcting me about the effects free neutrons would have on other atoms, and he is totally right. Free neutrons are very damaging, as their potential absorption into another atom will cause that atom's atomic mass to change, causing it to become an isotope. This changes the way the atom interacts, and if this atom is inside a body, the unpredictable effects could be detrimental. It also carries the possibility of making other atoms themselves radioactive, as they begin a decay pathway to try and reach equilibrium again, irradiating surrounding atoms. So, this proposed hydrogen ion shield keeps the FEV from being bombarded with neutrons. Whether that is reasonable or not, I can't say, but if they can protect from one kind of radiation, why wouldn't they protect from the others? If they really were worried about damage due to radiation, you would think that they would try and cover all their bases. And now we have come to the end, but do not worry, as Adam is always with you. If you would like to discuss Fallout lore with like-minded people, as well as myself, please come to my Discord server, as it is the only server consecrated to Adam. If you want to support me, well, you know the drill, but I also have a Patreon that enables me to cover any and all Fallout content, which can be pretty dark at times. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in my next video.